Episode 1, The Kings of Queens. The atmosphere of 1970s New York. In 1978, New York City was a different world. The city was on the verge of bankruptcy. Garbage strikes left piles of trash on the streets, the subway was covered in graffiti, and the Son of Sam murders had just finished terrorizing the public. In this chaos, organized crime didn't just exist, it thrived. The Power Vacuum and Robert's Lounge. At the center of this story is Robert's Lounge, a nondescript, blue-collar bar in South Ozone Park, Queens. It was owned by Jimmy the Gent Burke. To the neighbors, Jimmy was a charitable man who handed out $20 bills to kids. To the FBI, he was one of the most dangerous associates of the Lucchese crime family. Jimmy wasn't a made man because of his Irish heritage, but he had more power than most bosses. He ran a crew of high-stakes hijackers. Their specialty? JFK Airport. At the time, JFK was known as the mob's candy store. If you wanted a truckload of cigarettes, cameras, or Italian silk, you didn't buy it, you stole it from a loading dock at JFK. The protagonists. Jimmy Burke, the architect. A man who loved two things, money and killing people who might take it from him. Henry Hill, the hustler. The man who connected the street thieves to the high-level mobsters. Tommy DeSimone, the muscle. A young, terrifyingly violent associate who would kill someone for a minor insult. Episode 2, The Inside Man. The Death of Louis Werner. Every great heist needs a canary, someone on the inside who knows where the gold is buried. For the Lufthansa heist, that was Louis Werner. Werner was a cargo agent for Lufthansa, but he had a massive problem: he was a gambling addict. He owed over $20,000 to a bookie named Marty Krugman. To clear his debt, Werner told Krugman about the Lufthansa high-value vault. He explained that once a month, millions of dollars in untraceable U.S. currency were flown in from West Germany to be exchanged at American banks. The blueprint. Werner provided the crew with a literal map of the terminal. He told them where the double-door security system failed. The names of the guards who could be easily intimidated. The fact that the alarm system was outdated and hadn't been serviced in years. The meeting at Robert's Lounge. In late November 1978, the crew met in the back room of Robert's Lounge. Jimmy Burke listened as Henry Hill explained the plan. Burke was skeptical. Stealing a few $1,000s was easy, but stealing millions would bring the full weight of the FBI. However, the lure of the big score was too much. Burke gave the green light. They began dry runs, driving past the terminal at 3 a.m. to time the police patrols. Episode 3, 0 Hour, The Heist. 3 a.m., The Entry. A black Ford Econoline van pulls up to the Lufthansa cargo terminal. Inside are 6 men: Tommy DeSimone, Angelo Sepe, Joe Manry, Frenchie McMahon, Parnell, Stax Edwards, and a 6th unidentified gunman. They are wearing dark clothing and ski masks. They use a bolt cutter to snip the lock on the perimeter fence. They know the security guard, Kerry Whalen, is on his rounds. When Whalen spots the van, the crew doesn't run. They jump out with M1 carbines and Remington shotguns. They pistol whip Whalen, take his wallet, and tell him, "We know where your family lives. Do exactly what we say." 3:20 a.m., The Vault. The crew enters the lunchroom. 10 employees are having their break. The gunmen force them onto the floor at gunpoint. They find the shift supervisor, Rudy Eltz, and force him to the vault. This is the moment of highest tension. Eltz explains that the vault has a two-key system and a time lock. The crew becomes furious, thinking they've been set up. DeSimone threatens to kill Eltz on the spot. Finally, under the threat of death, Eltz manages to bypass the secondary alarm and open the heavy steel door. 4 a.m., The Load. Inside the vault, the crew sees more money than they have ever seen in their lives. Crates of $20, $50, and $100 bills. They begin a frantic bucket brigade, passing the crates from the vault to the van. They are working against the clock. They know the police shift change happens at 4:30 a.m. 4:16 a.m., the escape. The van is so heavy with cash and jewels that the suspension is scraping the ground. They drive out of the terminal, waving to the guard as if they belong there. They meet Jimmy Burke at a nearby parking lot. When Jimmy opens the back of the van and sees the sheer volume of money, he doesn't celebrate. He turns pale. He realizes that this isn't just a robbery, it's a declaration of war against the United States government. Episode 4, The Fatal Mistake. The morning after. As the sun rose over New York on December 12, 1978, Jimmy Burke was already spiraling into paranoia. The loot was moved to a safe house, but the gent was terrified of the trail they left behind. He gave one simple, crucial order to Parnell Stax Edwards: take the black Ford Econoline van to a car compactor in New Jersey and make it disappear. Stax Edwards was a blues musician and a small-time criminal who the crew liked because he was a good guy. However, Stax had a fatal flaw: he liked to get high. Instead of driving to New Jersey, Stax drove the van to his girlfriend's apartment, smoked some marijuana, and fell asleep. He intended to deal with the van in the morning. The FBI's first win. By 8 a.m., the NYPD had found the van parked in a no-parking zone. When they looked inside, they found mud from the JFK perimeter and a stray $100 bill. But most importantly, they found fingerprints. The forensic team linked the prints to Stax Edwards. The FBI's SSTF, Settlement Services Task Force, realized this wasn't just a random robbery. They now had a direct link to the Roberts Lounge gang. Within hours, the FBI had Stax's apartment under surveillance. The perfect crime had lasted less than 24 hours. Episode 5, The Bloodbath begins. The execution of Stax. Jimmy Burke found out about the van on the news. He didn't scream, he went silent. In Jimmy's world, a mistake was the same as a betrayal. He sent Tommy DeSimone and Angelo Sepe to visit Stax. On December 18, 1978, Tommy knocked on Stax's door. Stax, thinking his friends were there to help him hide, let them in. Tommy shot him 6 times in the chest and head while he was still in his underwear. This was the opening bell for the Lufthansa massacre. The purge logic. Jimmy realized that if he killed the people who helped him, he wouldn't have to pay them their share of the $6 million. It was a win-win for a psychopath: no witnesses and more money. Marty Krugman, the bookie who provided the tip. He started demanding his $500,000 finder's fee too aggressively. Jimmy had him murdered and his body put through a car shredder. He was never found. Richard Eaton, a scammer who tried to keep some of the money for himself. He was found hanging from a meat hook in a refrigerated truck, frozen solid. Episode 6, The Pink Cadillac. The violation of the rule. Jimmy had given a strict command: don't buy anything. Don't be flashy. Wait a year. He knew that the IRS and the FBI look for sudden wealth. But the crew consisted of low-level street thugs who had never seen millions. Joe, Buddha, Manry and Frenchie McMahon couldn't help themselves. A few days after the heist, Joe Manry showed up at the Christmas party in a brand-new, flashy pink Cadillac. At the same time, another associate's wife showed up wearing a $10,000 mink coat. The garbage truck murders. Jimmy saw the Cadillac and knew it was a death sentence for the whole crew. He realized these men were too loud to survive an FBI interrogation. In February 1979, the bodies of Frenchie McMahon and Joe Manry were found in a stolen garbage truck in Brooklyn. They had been shot in the back of the head. The disappearance of Tommy DeSimone. Even the stars weren't safe. Tommy DeSimone, the man who did most of the killing for Jimmy, disappeared in January 1979. While many thought it was because of Lufthansa, the rumor was that the Gambino family killed him because he had murdered a made man, Billy Batts, without permission years earlier. Jimmy Burke wept when he heard Tommy was gone, not out of grief, but because he lost his best hitman. Episode 7, The Informant. The walls close in. By 1980, Henry Hill was a man living on borrowed time. Jimmy Burke's cleanup had eliminated almost everyone involved in the heist. Henry was no longer just a conspirator, he was a target. To cope with the stress and the paranoia that Jimmy was planning to kill him, Henry became heavily involved in trafficking cocaine, a cardinal sin in the Lucchese family under boss Paul Vario. The arrest. In April 1980, narcotics agents arrested Henry Hill. While in jail, the FBI played him recordings from bugs planted in Robert's lounge and at Jimmy's home. Henry heard Jimmy talking about taking care of Henry's family. The realization hit him, his brothers were going to murder him to keep him quiet. The decision. Facing a life sentence for drugs and certain death on the outside, Henry Hill made a choice that shattered the mafia's code of omerta. He sat down with federal prosecutors and said, "I'll tell you everything. Not just Lufthansa. Everything." He became the first high-level mafia associate to enter the witness protection program, providing enough evidence to send dozens of mobsters to prison. Episode 8, The Trial of the Century. The Star Witness. The courtroom was packed when Henry Hill took the stand. For the first time, the public heard the inner workings of a heist that had become a national obsession. Henry described the gent not as a Robin Hood figure, but as a cold-blooded killer who strangled his friends for money. The legal chess match. Jimmy Burke was represented by some of the sharpest lawyers in New York. They argued that Henry Hill was a drug-addicted liar who was saying whatever the FBI wanted to hear to stay out of jail. Because the physical money from Lufthansa was never found, the prosecution struggled to charge Jimmy with the heist itself. The conviction. Ironically, Jimmy Burke wasn't sent to prison for the Lufthansa heist. He was convicted for his role in the 1978-79 Boston College point-shaving scandal, fixing basketball games, based on Henry's testimony. Later, he was convicted of the murder of Richard Eaton. Jimmy was sentenced to life in prison, where he would eventually die in 1996. The gent took the secret of the Lufthansa millions to his grave. Episode 9, The Missing Millions. Where is the money? $6 million, over $25 million today, simply vanished. Investigators have three main theories that remain debated to this day. The Panama Pipeline. It is believed Jimmy Burke sent the bulk of the cash to Panama through offshore accounts to fund massive drug shipments. The Gambino tax. Since JFK was Gambino territory, boss Paul Castellano reportedly demanded a 50% street tax. Some believe the money sat in the Gambino vaults until it was laundered into legitimate construction businesses. The burial grounds. Legends persist that millions in gold and cash are still buried under the cement of various driveways and basements in Queens and Long Island, hidden by crew members who were killed before they could dig it up. The economic impact. The theft was so large it caused a temporary disruption in the exchange rate of the US dollar in West Germany. It forced the Federal Reserve to change how currency was transported internationally, shifting away from commercial airlines to high-security military and private transport. Episode 10, The Ghost of Lufthansa. The Goodfellas Legacy. In 1990, the world saw a stylized version of these events in Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas. The movie turned the heist into a pop culture myth, but the real-life survivors lived in constant fear. Henry Hill spent the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, eventually becoming a public figure who spoke openly about the heist until his death in 2012. The 2013 discovery. The story had one final, grisly chapter. In 2013, the FBI acted on a tip and raided a house in South Ozone Park formerly owned by Jimmy Burke's daughter. They dug up the basement and found human remains. DNA confirmed it was Paul Katz, a man Jimmy suspected of being an informant in 1978. This proved that even 35 years later, the secrets of the Lufthansa crew were still surfacing. Final reflection. The Lufthansa heist remains the greatest unsolved, pure, cash robbery in history. It represents the peak of mafia power in America and the beginning of its end. The heist didn't just buy the crew luxury, it bought them a one-way ticket to the cemetery. As Henry Hill famously said at the end of his life, "We had it all. And then we threw it all away."